Forgiving others can be so difficult. And yet the only thing harder than forgiving someone is continuing to nurture the injury in your heart so the unforgiveness remains. I want to share with you how to begin a journey of forgiveness, but to do so, I need to tell a story from my family history that shows the stark difference between forgiving and not being able to let go. That story will begin with a mule kicking a cow, and by the time the story is done, 8 people will be dead. But here's the story that comes first. Some years before our main story, my great-grandfather, Frank Logue, was stabbed 3 times, shot, and killed. In the trial that followed his death, my great-grandmother, Annie Logue, testified that her husband was a big man, and the man who killed him was only defending himself. No good could come, she said, from punishing his killer, and so depriving another family of their father. That was one story. Now the mule and the cow. In September of 1940, Davis Timmerman's mule got into neighbor Wallace Logue's yard in Edgefield County, South Carolina. It was not the first time, and Wallace had warned Davis. The mule was given to kicking. The milk cow was a necessity. On this day, my grandfather's Uncle Wallace came home to find the mule had kicked the cow in the head, and the cow had to be put down. He was furious. Davis Timmerman offered Wallace $20 for the cow. Wallace stewed and then later went to the Timmerman's store to get more money. Davis Timmerman was slight while Wallace was 6'3". Wallace demanded $40 for the cow and then took out an axe handle from a sales rack when Davis refused. He got in a good hit before Davis pulled a gun hidden behind the counter. He shot twice. Wallace fell to the floor and bled out. Timmerman drove to the sheriff's office and turned himself in. In the trial that followed, the jury ruled the killing had been in self-defense. Davis Timmerman went free. Wallace's wife, Sue, and his brother, George, couldn't sit still with forgiving Davis. They were all faithful members of Little Stevens Creek Baptist Church, but this lesson had not gotten all the way into their bones. Sue and George gave $500 to their nephew, also named Frank Logue, to get him to hire a gunman to kill Davis Timmerman. Frank was an officer with the Spartanburg Police Department, and he hired an out-of-work plasterer named Clarence Bagwell to take vengeance for them. A year after Davis Timmerman killed Wallace Logue, Frank hid in the floorboard of a car while Bagwell went into Timmerman's store and shot 5 times in rapid succession with a .38 caliber pistol. The two went through the pistol in the lake. The matter was done. Bagwell later talked when drunk, and the woman he told notified the police. They picked up Frank Logue at work, but news reached the Logues that newly elected Sheriff Watt Allen and Deputy Doc Clark were on their way to arrest Sue and George. My grandparents and my dad were in the house. They left. Fred Dorn, a sharecropper on Sue Logue's land, showed up, and he and George and Sue prepared to make a stand. In short order, Sheriff Allen was shot in the head and killed. Deputy Clark was severely wounded in the stomach and arm, and although wounded, Clark managed to shoot both Dorn and George Logue. Clark left the house, staggered out into Highway 378, where a passing motorist picked him up. Law enforcement then came and surrounded the house. They also asked the local circuit court judge to appeal to the Logues and to Dorn to turn themselves in. Judge Strom Thurmond, who later became governor, and Senator Strom Thurmond walked unarmed into the home and came out with the Logues. Dorn died the next day. Deputy Clark the day after that. 4 months later, George Logue, Sue Logue, and Clarence Bagwell sat through the 3-day trial. In just 2 hours, the jury came back with the death penalty for all 3. A later trial for Frank Logue reached the same verdict. Sue, George, and Clarence went to the electric chair on January 15th, 1943, all within an hour. Frank Logue, who hired Bagwell for the Timmerman killing, was sentenced to die on January 23rd, 1944. After eating his final meal, he was prepped for the electric chair. Governor Olin D. Johnston arrived at the prison shortly after midnight to visit Frank and soon commuted his sentence to life. In all, 8 people died as a result of that lack of forgiveness. Wallace Logue, Davis Timmerman, Sheriff Watt Allen, Deputy W.L. Clark, Fred Dorn, Sue Logue, George Logue, and Clarence Bagwell. My great-grandmother spoke up for forgiveness and understanding when her husband was killed. But then her brother and sister-in-law and nephew just couldn't let it go. Joe Frank was, by the way, transformed. He eventually went free. I recall fondly going hunting with my great-uncle and his sons when I was growing up, and chaplains at the prison where he are tell his story today of how it's not too late to find forgiveness and mercy. I know this story is a little extreme, but the body count for not forgiving is very high. Resentment and anger lead to heart issues, cancer, basically increased risk for whatever might ail you if your immune system is low. If the cost of forgiving someone seems high, you haven't totaled the cost of not forgiving. If unhealed emotional wounds could be seen the way a fresh, deep cut can be seen, then stores, churches, ball fields would look more like the site of a plane crash. The walking wounded stumbling around in shock, not realizing how life-threatening the wounds truly are. Don't deal with your dad's alcoholism. Never bring it up to him or anyone else. Instead, just ignore your dad, cut him out of your life, then take every opportunity to make your mom suffer for allowing that man into your childhood home. Never mention why you act like you do. Just get your revenge slowly by slowly. And when the old pain from the times he hit you or the words he said in drunken anger resurface, just stop by the liquor store on the way home. You'll be fine. Okay, that's a little much, but if you act like nothing happened, or if you just heal the surface, you'll leave the hard work of healing undone. Not forgiving is like drinking poison every day and hoping that it will kill the person you don't want to forgive. So how do we get real healing? It takes true, lasting forgiveness. But forgiveness of big hurts takes a process in which you come to see what needs to be forgiven. You come to see the person who hurt you as God sees them. You give up on revenge. You let go of the hurt. What you don't do is ignore the problem. Please know that forgiving someone does not mean forgetting or staying in a place where the person can continue to hurt you. You can forgive someone of abuse even as you move away from him or her. In forgiving someone who's mistreated you, it's best to start by remembering that person is as human as you are. To take but one example that I've already used, imagine your father treated you roughly when you were growing up, but you recall, that while he was tough on you, he was treating you as badly as he himself was treated by his own father. By forgiving your father the wrongs he did to you, you may break the cycle that began generations earlier. This forgiveness you offer is an act of will first. The name that first came to mind as you've heard me talking is the person you may have trouble imagining how you can forgive. Try it anyway. I want to offer you just the shortest of prayers that can be very powerful. Bless, and then you name the person. Change me. Bless, change me. Pray for God to bless the person who hurt you. Pray for God to change you. That healing comes from God's love, which you can begin to release more fully by saying those words. If you can only say the words and not really believe them, don't fret. If you have to grit your teeth, it's fine. Try it later. Keep coming back to those words of forgiveness. Bless, change. Bless them, change me. I found it transformative in my own life. There's power in releasing the other person from the debt they do owe you for the suffering that they caused. Here's one last truth about forgiveness as I close. The hardest person to forgive is not the one who caused you the greatest hurt. The hardest person to forgive is yourself. Seeing others as God sees them means also seeing yourself as God sees you. Now, I promise I've not said all that needs to be said. What you need is to talk to a priest or a therapist. You need to lay the hurts out to someone who can help you sort out how you can begin the process of forgiveness. Then you need to take the steps to let go of the hurts. Here's how you know you've succeeded in forgiving others from the heart, as Jesus teaches in our gospel reading. If you truly forgive someone, when the old wound resurfaces, you won't have the anger, the resentment, or the negative energy rise up like it does now, just spiking in you. You'll remember the pain. You'll see how you've grown from finding the lasting healing for yourself. And then you will know that you have truly forgiven and you are truly free. Amen.